The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Harrison and Webb architecture firm as Victoria Harrison stood frozen in the doorway of her private office. Her hand trembled slightly as she gripped the door frame, listening to the voices echoing from the conference room down the hall. "She'll never be able to take over the firm," her business partner, Gerald Webb, was saying. "It's unfortunate, but we need to be realistic about succession planning." Victoria's jaw tightened. They were talking about her daughter, Lily. Her beautiful, brilliant 12-year-old daughter, who had been born completely blind. "The board is concerned," another voice chimed in. "Harrison and Webb is built on visual innovation. How can..." Victoria strode down the hallway and pushed open the conference room door. "How can my daughter lead when she can't see?" she finished coldly. "Is that what you were going to ask, Richard?" The three board members shifted uncomfortably in their leather chairs. "Victoria, we're simply being pragmatic," Gerald said smoothly, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. "Lily is a wonderful girl, but architecture is a visual medium. Perhaps she could pursue law or music instead." "This meeting is over," Victoria said, her voice like steel. "And for the record, my daughter will prove every single one of you wrong." But as Victoria returned to her office, she sank into her chair and buried her face in her hands. How could she be so certain? Lily had been attending the prestigious Ashford Academy for the Blind, excelling in her studies, learning to navigate the world with remarkable independence. But architecture, design, spatial reasoning on a level that would impress the firm's demanding clients, Victoria had spent 12 years fighting for her daughter, fighting against the pitying looks and the lowered expectations. But even she wondered if this battle might be impossible to win. 3 weeks later, on a bitter November afternoon, Lily Harrison sat on a bench in Franklin Park, her guide cane resting beside her. She'd convinced her driver to let her have an hour alone, something her mother rarely allowed. At 12, Lily was tired of being treated like porcelain, precious and fragile. "Excuse me, miss." A rough, hesitant voice interrupted her thoughts. "I don't mean to bother you, but are you all right? You've been sitting in the cold for a while now." Lily turned her head toward the voice. "I'm fine, thank you. Just thinking. Mind if an old man sits down? My legs aren't what they used to be." "Of course." The bench creaked as someone settled beside her. Lily caught the smell of worn wool and wood smoke. "Name's Marcus," the man said. "Marcus Greene. I've seen you here before, with your cane. You come to think, or to get away?" Lily smiled slightly. "Both, I guess. I'm Lily. And you're homeless." She heard him shift uncomfortably. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." "It's all right," Marcus said with a dry chuckle. "Lost my apartment about 6 months ago. Used to be an engineer before the factory closed down. Then I served overseas, came back different. Things just unraveled." They sat in companionable silence for a moment. "What were you thinking about so hard?" Marcus asked gently, Lily hesitated, then found herself speaking. Everyone says I can't do what I want because I'm blind. My mom runs an architecture firm, and I want to be an architect too. But the people at her company think it's impossible. Impossible, Marcus repeated thoughtfully. You know, when I was in the service, we had to navigate buildings in complete darkness. We learned to build mental maps using sound, touch, and spatial memory. Some of my best soldiers could move through structures better in pitch black than most people could with the lights on. Lily sat up straighter. Really? Architecture isn't just about seeing, young lady. It's about understanding how spaces feel. How sound moves through a room. How textures guide you. How temperature changes near windows and walls. Marcus tapped the bench thoughtfully. If anything, you might understand spaces better than people who rely only on their eyes. For the first time in weeks, something sparked in Lily's chest. Would you be willing to teach me about spatial mapping? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. I'm just a homeless man, miss. I'm not sure your mother would, please, Lily said. Just give me a chance to learn. I'll meet you here, in the park. My mother doesn't have to know yet. Over the next 2 months, Lily slipped away to Franklin Park 3 times a week. Marcus taught her techniques he'd learned in the military, echolocation through tongue clicks, feeling air currents that indicated walls and openings, using her cane to measure distances and angles with precision. Close your eyes, Marcus would say, then laugh at his own mistake. Well, you know what I mean. Focus. Tell me about the bandstand we're standing in. Lily would stand still, turning slowly. Octagonal. 8 support columns, evenly spaced. The roof creates an echo that suggests a domed ceiling about 15 feet high. There's an opening to the east, the sound carries differently there. Excellent, Marcus would say warmly. Now describe how you'd redesign it to make it more accessible. Lily's mind would race with possibilities. Wider entrance with tactile guide strips. Railings at different heights for both children and adults. Textured panels on the columns that create acoustic markers. Marcus pushed her further each session, taking her to different buildings around the city. Empty warehouses, subway stations, old churches. He taught her to build 3-dimensional models using wire and clay, to understand blueprints through raised line drawings, to calculate load-bearing walls through mathematical ratios she could do in her head. But one frozen afternoon in January, as Lily arrived at their usual meeting spot, Marcus wasn't there. She waited for an hour, then 2, calling out his name softly, listening for his familiar footsteps. Finally, a park maintenance worker approached her. You looking for the homeless guy who's usually here? Marcus something. Yes. Do you know where he is? Saw an ambulance take him away yesterday. Heard he collapsed from pneumonia. They took him to County General. Lily's heart plummeted. County General was the overcrowded public hospital where homeless patients were often left in hallways for days. Victoria Harrison was reviewing blueprints in her home office when Lily burst in, her face flushed with cold and urgency. Mom, I need your help. Please. It's important. Victoria turned, alarmed by the intensity in her daughter's voice. Lily, what's wrong? Where's Raymond? He said he dropped you at Sarah's house. I lied, Lily said, her voice cracking. I've been meeting someone in the park. A man named Marcus Greene. He's homeless, and he's been teaching me about architecture and spatial design, and now he's sick in the hospital and they're not taking care of him properly because he doesn't have insurance or family. And I, slow down, Victoria said, her mind reeling. You've been meeting a homeless stranger. Lily, do you understand how dangerous? He's not dangerous. He's the kindest, smartest person I've ever met. He's a veteran and an engineer, and he lost everything, and he's the only person who believes I can be an architect. Tears were streaming down Lily's face now. Please, Mom. He helped me. We have to help him. Victoria felt something break open in her chest. She knelt in front of her daughter, taking her hands. Tell me everything, she said quietly. 2 hours later, Victoria's Mercedes pulled up to County General Hospital. She strode through the emergency department with Lily at her side, her designer heels clicking authoritatively on the linoleum. I'm looking for a patient named Marcus Greene, she told the overwhelmed nurse at the desk. He was admitted yesterday with pneumonia. The nurse barely looked up. Hallway C, bed 17. But it's not visiting hours, Anne. I'm his attorney, Victoria lied smoothly. I need to speak with him immediately regarding his estate. She found Marcus in exactly the state she'd feared, lying on a gurney in a crowded hallway, and 4 in his arm, his breathing labored and wet. His eyes were closed, his weathered face grey. Mr. Greene, Victoria said softly, his eyes fluttered open. When he saw Lily, recognition flickered across his face. Lily, you shouldn't, not safe here, Marcus. This is my mother, Lily said, gripping his hand. She's going to help you. Victoria was already on her phone. Within 20 minutes, she'd arranged for Marcus to be transferred to Mercy Heights Medical Center, the private hospital where the Harrison family had been donors for years. Within an hour, Marcus was in a private room with a pulmonologist examining him. Severe pneumonia complicated by malnutrition and exposure, the doctor told Victoria grimly. Another day or 2 without proper treatment, and... He didn't finish the sentence. Marcus Greene spent 2 weeks recovering at Mercy Heights. Victoria visited daily, initially to understand what this stranger had been teaching her daughter, but gradually, because she found herself genuinely interested in his story. He'd been an engineer at Preston Manufacturing, designing industrial equipment, until the factory closed and moved production overseas. The job loss had triggered a downward spiral, divorce, PTSD from his military service surfacing with full force, medical bills from a surgery, then finally eviction. He'd been on the streets for 8 months. I'm not looking for charity, Mrs. Harrison, Marcus said firmly during one visit. I helped Lily because she reminded me of my own daughter. She's got that same determination. That same brilliance that people want to ignore because they are too busy seeing what's missing instead of what's there. Where is your daughter now? Victoria asked. Marcus's face clouded. Arizona. With her mother. We haven't spoken in 3 years. She tried to help me, but I was too proud. Too angry. Pushed everyone away. Victoria was quiet for a moment. My daughter tells me you're a gifted teacher. That you understand spatial design in ways she's never encountered. I understand how to navigate spaces when you can't rely on sight, Marcus corrected. It's not the same as, what if it is? Victoria interrupted. What if that's exactly what architecture needs? Someone who understands how spaces work for people who experience them differently. She made him an offer that left him speechless. A temporary position at Harrison and Webb as a consultant on accessible design, with housing and a salary that would get him back on his feet. In exchange, he would continue mentoring Lily. Mrs. Harrison, I've been living in the park for months. Your board, your clients, they'll never accept. Let me worry about my board, Victoria said with a slight smile. Do you want the job or not? Gerald Webb nearly had an apoplexy when Victoria announced her decision at the next board meeting. You've hired a homeless man with no architectural credentials to mentor your blind daughter, he said, his voice rising. Victoria, this is beyond eccentric. This is professional suicide. Our clients expect innovation, Victoria cut him off. And I'm tired of watching this firm design buildings that look stunning in photographs, but are inaccessible nightmares for anyone with a disability. We're leaving money on the table and ignoring an entire market, because we're too narrow-minded to see beyond conventional approaches. This is about your daughter, Richard, one of the board members said quietly. You're making emotional decisions, am I? Victoria pulled out a folder. Here are the statistics on the disability market. Here are the lawsuits against architectural firms for buildings that violate accessibility codes. Here's the emerging demand for universal design. And here, she laid down a final document, is the proposal that Marcus and Lily have been working on for the past week. She distributed copies around the table. It was a design for the new Riverside Community Center, a project the firm had been struggling with for months. The building featured multiple levels and awkward sightlines that made previous designs feel cramped and confusing. This is remarkable, one board member murmured, studying the drawings. The flow is completely intuitive. The acoustic dampening, the textural variations that guide people through the space. My daughter designed this, Victoria said quietly. With Marcus's guidance. Using techniques that account for how people experience space without relying primarily on vision. And I guarantee you it's more innovative than anything we've produced in the past 5 years. The room fell silent. The Riverside Community Center project became the test case. Victoria pitched it to the city council herself, with Marcus and Lily present. When council members expressed skepticism about the unconventional design team, Lily stepped forward. I'd like to walk you through the design, she said clearly, her hands moving confidently over the tactile model they'd built. Traditional community centers often create anxiety for people with disabilities, because the layouts prioritize aesthetics over navigation. Our design uses natural wayfinding principles. She explained how the building's corridors use textural cues, smooth tiles transitioning to rougher surfaces near staircases, acoustic panels that change the sound quality near important rooms, temperature variations from strategically placed windows. Every element served both functional and aesthetic purposes. Inclusive design isn't about accommodation, Lily concluded. It's about creating spaces that work elegantly for everyone. The council approved the project unanimously. Construction on the Riverside Community Center took 18 months. Marcus, now living in a small apartment and working officially as Harrison and Webb's Director of Universal Design, oversaw the accessibility features personally. Lily, now 14, spent her afternoons after school reviewing plans and suggesting modifications. When the building opened, it won 3 architectural awards and was featured in Design Futures magazine. The article praised Harrison and Webb's revolutionary approach to spatial design that transcends traditional visual paradigms. But the real moment of triumph came at the opening ceremony, when Gerald Webb, who'd fought the project every step of the way, approached Victoria with something like awe in his voice. "The acoustics are perfect. The flow is... I've never seen people navigate a new building this intuitively." "How did, my daughter?" Victoria said simply. And the man we almost turned away, because he didn't fit our narrow definition of expertise. Lily stood nearby with Marcus, listening to the crowds moving through the space. "Do you hear that?" she asked him softly. "The way the sound carries. The way people aren't bumping into each other or getting lost." "You did that," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "You proved that limitations exist only in people's imaginations." That evening, at the celebration dinner, Victoria stood to make a toast. The private room was filled with the firm's partners, key clients, city officials and staff. "5 years ago," she began, "I was told that my daughter could never follow in my footsteps. That architecture required sight, and without it, she would always be limited." Victoria's voice wavered slightly. "I believed in her, but I didn't understand how to help her prove everyone wrong." She looked at Marcus, who sat uncomfortably in a suit Victoria had insisted on buying him. Then a man who'd lost everything, a man most people walk past without seeing, gave my daughter something I couldn't, the tools to see the world in a completely different way. He taught her that the most profound understanding doesn't come from what you see, but how you experience space, sound, texture, and movement. Victoria raised her glass. To Marcus Greene, who reminded us that expertise and wisdom can be found in unexpected places. And to my daughter, Lily, who will one day run this firm and design buildings that change how we think about the spaces we inhabit. Lily stood, finding Marcus's hand and squeezing it tight. And to Marcus, she added, who taught me that impossible just means nobody's been creative enough yet. 6 years later, Architectural Digest would run a cover story on Lily Harrison, the blind architect revolutionizing universal design. By then, Harrison and Webb had become the leading firm for inclusive architecture, with Marcus Greene's methodologies taught in design schools nationwide. But the real victory was simpler. A girl who'd been told she couldn't, and a man who'd been dismissed as nothing, proving together that the only real limitations are the ones we accept. Marcus eventually reconnected with his daughter in Arizona. The photo he kept on his desk showed 3 generations, Marcus, his daughter and grandson, and beside them, Lily Harrison, the girl who'd given him a reason to believe in second chances. And in Franklin Park, on the bench where they'd first met, a small bronze plaque was installed. Here, impossibilities became possibilities. In memory of every person dismissed, overlooked, or underestimated. Your story isn't over.